The true question for the United Nations today, for people all over the world who hope for better lives for themselves and their children, is a basic one. Are we still patriots?
Are we still patriots, or are we just a bunch of mindless globalists? As President Trump addressed the UN General Assembly, many of us wondered, would he be the harsh critic of the United Nations we saw during the campaign, or if Trump would be tempered by the gravity of his new office? The establishment and some of his globalist advisors seem to have won the turf war in the White House in recent weeks, making the Trump base wonder if he's still the man they voted for. And while the execution wasn't as strong as the Trump we grew to love during his campaign, his 40-plus minute address was still for those who aspire to see America follow a new America First doctrine. And well, let's start with what will be making all the headlines today. Trump had a stern, direct message for North Korea as their delegation sat in the front row.
The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary.
Well, as is usually the case with President Trump, in what was a seemingly strong and responsible statement that if North Korea commits an unprovoked attack on the U.S. or her allies, North Korea will be destroyed, the dishonest media reacted with full Trump derangement syndrome. Terry Moran, ABC's chief foreign correspondent, went on air shortly after the speech and declared that Trump's threat, quote, borders on the threat of committing a war crime, unquote. I guess the press and the left prefer President Obama's UN addresses full of meaningless platitudes and progressive virtue signaling, and of course his cozying up to Iranian mullahs despite their constant threats towards the US and Israel. While this president made no bones about it, he's no friend of the Iranian regime.
The Iranian government masks a corrupt dictatorship behind the false guise of a democracy. It has turned a wealthy country with a rich history and culture into an economically depleted rogue state whose chief exports are violence, bloodshed, and chaos. The longest suffering victims of Iran's leaders are, in fact, its own people. Rather than use its resources to improve Iranian lives, its oil profits go to fund Hezbollah and other terrorists that kill innocent Muslims and attack their peaceful Arab and Israeli neighbors.
Now that is a refreshing thing to hear after 8 years of Obama sucking up to Iran. And did you notice the reaction of Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu? Did you know that's the first time he sat with the General Assembly for a U.S. president's address? And how do all you journalists and Democrats and far leftists out there calling Trump an anti-Semite in the wake of Charlottesville reconcile this clear shift towards a closer relationship with the Jewish state of Israel? But Trump wasn't finished with Iran. And in a somewhat surprising decision, given the numerous rumors in recent days, Trump made no bones about it once more. He is still not a fan of that Iranian nuclear deal.
The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it, believe me.
I just love that part of the end where Trump threw in one of his classic believe me's, and the Iranian ambassador to the United Nations totally flinched on camera for the whole world to see. But Trump was not done calling out what he referred to as the wicked few countries which need to be confronted. Both Venezuela and Cuba were on the president's list. And what can only be described as typical Trumpian form, he called out the root ideology behind so much suffering in Venezuela today, and historically around the world.
The problem in Venezuela is not that socialism has been poorly implemented, but that socialism has been faithfully implemented. Now
that is exactly the kind of thing you want to hear from the leader of the free world. In recent weeks, there have been doubts whether President Trump was sticking to his America First populist and nationalist ideology that was at the core of his election victory. Because with the departure of Steve Bannon and the apparent willingness to work with Democrats on a few issues, there has been some cracks in the base, shall we say. But if we've learned anything from his address, those fears can be put to bed. Not just for American patriots, but even for those around the world who feared that an America First policy may be harmful to the world. President Trump related his view of America First for each and every nation state in the 193-member United Nations Assembly.
As President of the United States, I will always put America first. Just like you, as the leaders of your countries, will always and should always put your countries first.
Thanks for watching. You know, the dishonest media will put all sorts of spins on Trump's address today. So make sure you click subscribe on Rebel Media's YouTube channel. Never miss an update on President Trump.